Kuyambira chaka chamawa dziko la Malawi likhala likuyamba kupereka maphunziro aulere msukulu zonse za boma za sekondari. Mprogramu yathu ya Zodiak exclusive tsiku la lero tikufuna ticheze ndi katswiri pa nkhani za maphunziro Dr. Limbani Nsapato. Iwo watu tikufuna tifotokozere kuti nkhani imeneyi akuiona bwanji. Ndikulandireni Dr. Nsapato mprogramu yathu.
Zikomo kwambiri.
Boma la Peter Mutharika kapena ndine kuti President Peter Mutharika anafotokoza kuti kuyambira chaka chamawa boma liyamba kupereka maphunziro aulere msukulu zonse za sekondari za boma. What's your instant reaction to this reality?
Yeah, ndizoona kuti a president alengeza zoti maphunziro azakhala aulere, and of course pankhani yaikulu ndi ya maphunziro aku sekondari, komabe tikuziwa kuti akufunisisanso kuti even ku primary zina zonse zokhuza mafees zimene zimachitika ku primary zitheretu. Ndiye ife monga amabunge omwe si aboma pa mgwirizano wathu wa Civil Society Education Coalition tayilandira nkhani bwino kwambiri chifukwa chakuti choyambirira ikugwirizana ndi mfundo zimati za Sustainable Development Goals zimene zikuyenera kuti zachitwe realized by 2030. So mchaka cha 2015 maiko anagwirizana pa mfundo ya Sustainable Development number 4 imene makamba za quality education kuti pamazafika 2030 maiko azakhale atakonza ndondomeko yoti kuzakhale maphunziro aulere ku primary komanso ku secondary. Ndiye choyambirira zikugwirizana ndithu ndi mfundo zimenezo. Komanso chachiwiri mu Malawi 2063 imene ndi vision ya dziko mulinso nkhani yokhuza kuti pa theme ya human capital development ikutengedwa ngati kuti an enabler, and zikufunika kuti ana ambiri aphunzire kwenikweni ku secondary komanso kumapita ku university. And tikaunikira mwina chiwerengero cha ana amene ali ndi mwayi wopita ku secondary padakale pano ndi chochepa tikachita compare ndi ku primary. Chifukwa ku primary kuli ana around 5 million. Koma tikapita ku secondary chiwerengero chikuthamangira chama 500,000. Kusangiza kuti pali difference yaikulu ndithu. And tikamapitanso ku university tikukamba za around 100,000. So nza kuti tikamapita school yathuyi ikupanga ka pyramid kuti kuchoka ku primary kumapita ku secondary kumapita ku university kukumakhala narrow ndithu. And chimozi chimene chikupangisa ndi chakuti school zathu tikamapita kusogolo ku secondary ku university ana akumayenera kuti azilipira kuli mafees osiyanasiyana.
Ndimafuna ndizifunsa available Dr. Nsapato kuti mukumvetsa bwanji za maphunziro aulere ku secondary. Sipazikhala kulipira kalikonse ingakhale school za boarding za boma?
Tikawerenga manifesto komanso kuti mwina tibwezerane pambuyo mu 2018 chifukwa nkhani inayamba 2018. 2018 under the DPP government kunatukuka secular yonena kuti ali ndi chikhumbokhumbo kuti maphunziro aku secondary akhale aulere. Ndiye choyambirira kuchosa ndalama zonse zimene zimaperekedwa. Okay? Ndiye nthawi imene jana yamba ndithu ndi tuition kuti fees ya school. Tuition ndimene kuti maphunziro akuchitika. Okay? Komanso anachosa amati textbook revolving fund ija yolipirira mabuku. Anachosa manager. Komanso anayenera kuti achose development fund. Zimene zizi zinali zoyambirira ndithu kuti tipange kuti maphunziro athu akhale aulere. Ana asamalipire china chilichonse kapena kuti mafees amene angapangise kuti mwina iwowo avutike asapite pasogolo ndi maphunziro awo. Of course nthawi imeneyo atalengeza zimenezozo panangokhala chaka chimozo ziwiri boma la DPP linatuluka mboma, and then kunabweranso boma lina. And I think the idea inali yoti akachosa zimene zijazi ndiye kuti boma likuyenera kuonjezera ndalama zimene zimapereka kuma school. Kuti kumene kuja azikagulira khandi makope, khandi mabuku, azikonza zina za development pa school paja and so on. Koma between 2020 kusafika pano taona kuti school zambiri zakhala zikuvutika. Peza kuti kandi ku CDSS, kandi ku boarding, kandi ma granted school, ORT, kapena ndalama zimene amayenera kuti azipereka pafupi. Ndalama zimene zikhala zovuta kwambiri kuti ziperekedwe. And as a result, kwakupezekanso kuti mwina malo moti maphunziro aja aulere zimabwera pano kwa makolo kuti apange ma contribution osiyana and zimene zinali zovuta kwambiri. Koma kumbali ya maphunziro aulere akuyenera kuti ana asamalipire china chilichonse. Okay, kapena malipiro amene amaphinja kwambiri ana amene aja achosedwe kuti mwayi wopita pasogoloni maphunziro awo ukhalepo ndithu okwanira.
Ndimafuna ndimvetsetse pamenepo kuti ndi sukulu za boarding zomwe chifukwa ena kuona ngati kuti sukulu za boarding ndi zimene mwe zimakhala zodulirapo kwambiri. Ndi tuition fee okha kapena tikuyang'ananso boarding fee?
Mu manifesto tikayiwerenga bwinobwino manifesto sakukambapo za boarding. Koma mwina kwa ifeyo tikuona ngati kuti mbali imene inso itakhala kuti ayiganizira zitakhala bwino. Chifukwa choti ma boarding school aja kwenikweni like ma national secondary schools ndi kumene kumaperekedwa maphunziro apamwamba kwambiri of high quality. Okay, and ndi kumene mwana akasankhidwa dziko limakhala lonyadira kuti ayi munthu wasankhidwa kupita ku school yabwino. Komanso mwina kumakhala chitetezo chokwanira kuti iye ana ali pa boarding. Pali ma boarding secondary school, ma district boarding, komanso pali ma national boarding. Boarding iyi ikupanga chigawo chachikulu kwambiri pa nkhani ya ndalama zimene zimaperekedwa. Chifukwa mwachitsanzo mwina tuition itakhala kuti ili chama 40,000 or 50,000, koma boarding imafika chama 200,000, pano tikumva chama 500,000 ukapita ku national secondary school. Ndezi kusonyeza kuti pali ana ena ndithu ngati boarding isiganiziridwa pa nkhani imene iyo ya maphunziro aulere ikhala yovuta. Komabe we understand kuti boarding imachita cost kwambiri and mwina kuyenera kuti papezeke njira. Ngati boma silichoseratu boarding fees, kwa mwina takuichita subsidize, ncholinga yoti mwina makolo apereke theka, boma lipereke theka kuti chipinjo chimene chimapangisa ana kuti asapitire pa maphunziro awo chifukwa akulipira boarding yomwe ikula chifukwa cha vuto la zachuma chathu ndi kuti chipinjo chimene chichoke.
Tibwerera ku nkhani imene ya mwina kuthekera komanso zimene zingachitike ngati mwina ndondomeko imene ya maphunziro aulere itapitirire. Koma ndimafuna ndimvetse kuti mukuona kuti maphunziro amene aulere apindulira ndani?
Maphunziro aulere apindulira ana ambiri. Chifukwa mwachitsanzo tikaonikira enrollment imene ili ku secondary padakali pano. Timakamba za around 500,000. Majority ya ana ili maskulu ajamati community day secondary school. And kumene huku kumapita ana oti akuchokera mabanja ovutika kwambiri. And ma community day secondary school akuchira cover around 60% of the enrollment. Meaning kuti mene tikukamba zoti chaka cha mawa maphunziro azakhala aulere ndikuti ndalama imene imaperekedwa kandi 50,000 kandi 70,000 kuma community day secondary school ngati yothandizira pa chitukuko cha pa school ndiye kuti ndalama imeneja ichoka chifukwa ma community day secondary school ambiri suti ali ndi boarding ayi. Okay, ndiye kuti ana amalipira for day schooling, ndiye kuti it was more on the tuition. Ndiye kuti akaichosa imeneja we are talking of more than 200,000 learners ambiri ayiwo ovutika ochokera ku mizi ndi amene achite ndithu benefit. Komanso pali ana amene ali ma district secondary schools. Boma lina lilonse kuli ma district secondary school. Kumene kuja kulinso chiwerengero cha almost 15%. Ndiye kuti kumene kuja thandizikanso. So we could say kuti kuma national secondary school ndi kwabwino ndi kumenenso mwina ma boarding amakhala very high. Koma chiwerengero cha ana kumene kuja ndi chochepa. Mwina we can be talking of like 10,000 to 20,000. So if we compare the overall population, ndiye kuti amene akuchita benefit kwambiri ndi amene akhale akuma community day secondary school komanso kuma district convention schools, and in the majority awo ndioti amachokera makomo ovutika. And if we can see ma reason ambiri amene ana amachita dropout zimachita related to poverty, kuti umphawi ndi umene umapangisa, and kuti makolo asapeze ndalama zokwanira zoti apereke kuma school. Ndiye tikupira kuti maphunziro aulere amenewa apindulira ana ambiri ochuluka amene akuchokera ku mizi komanso amene makolo awo sangathe kukwanisa kuti alipire ma fees.
What impact will this free secondary education bring to Malawi?
Kukhala impact yaikulu, there will be big impact because it will help to ensure retention. Because we noted that most of the students, I think 50% of the students that were dropping out from secondary, it was because of fees. So I can give an example that over the past 5 years, on average, 23,000 secondary school students were dropping out. And out of that, 12,000 students were dropping out because of fees. The rest were dropping out because of other issues. So you can see that over half of those that were dropping out because of fees. And removing the fees will be a big relief, and it will enhance retention. And they'll be able to complete, the students will be able to complete. Right now, secondary school completion rate is around 30%. Okay, so we expect that with the removal of the fees, this should be able to increase beyond maybe 60% or 70%. Kumafika somwina ku 100%. Ndiye kuti ana ambiri aphunzira. Kweni ana asungwana komanso ana amaulumali osiyanasiyana ndi amene amaoneka kuti amachita dropout kwambiri, and zimenezi ziwapindulira.
Kodi ndinakudulani poyamba, kodi dziko la Malawi lili ndi kuthekera kokhazikitsa maphunziro amene waulere ku skulu za secondary?
Kuthekera kulipo, koma pakuyenera kuti kuchita plan bwinobwino komanso kuchita manage bwinobwino. Chifukwa as we know, tinayamba ndi free primary education 1994. And the free primary education imene vuto limene linalipo nayo sitinachite plan bwinobwino. Tinangoti kungoyambira siku lakuti primary school ndi yaulere. Ndiye kunapeza kuti ana ambiri anapita ukalembesa and chiwerengero chinachita double, kuchoka chama 1.9 umafika 3.2 million. And zinayi zovuta chifukwa malo ophunzirira kunalibe, mabuku kandi zipangizo zinazophunzirira aphunzisi anali ochepa. Ndiye kuti management sinaende bwino. Koma of course we've seen kuti the government has been able to give high allocation of funding to basic education, which includes primary education. In secondary, I believe kuti kuthekeranso kulipo. Chimene chimangofunika ndi political will. So mwachisanzo mene boma linachosa mafizo osiyanasiyana mu 2018, timayembekezera kuti ndrama zimene zinachosedwa zija zimene makolo amapereka boma litenge udindo poonjezera ndalama zimene zimapita ku secondary education. Koma if you can see over the past 5 years, the budget allocations in the Ministry of Education, secondary education has been receiving less than the expected amount. I think the percentage has been around 20%, whereby primary it has been around 50% or 60%, tertiary 30% above. So this time around, we think that there is need to realign the priorities and ensure that secondary education gets a fair share of the budget. At the same time, the money for operations in the schools should be provided in time. So that at least there shouldn't be challenges.
You talked about political will and,
yes,
and also proper planning.
Yes.
Of course, there is political will because the government is now coming out to say from next year we are introducing or we're rolling out free secondary school education policy. On the part of planning, do you see that there has been proper planning or there is proper planning for that?
Well, I would think that some planning has taken place, but not much, because anyway, we are talking of just around a month since the new government came in. And we are also talking right now, we have a PS for education, but we don't have a minister for education. Because the issues of policy have to be guarded and supported at the high level. So the minister must be there and drive the policy. The president sets the agenda, but the minister has to work with the technical people. So there hasn't been much planning. Of course, probably the PS can be meeting with some management people, but we need all key stakeholders to be involved, including even the parents, including civil society and others. There is need for a round table to discuss what are the key parameters of this free secondary education. What does it constitute? But what is also the role of different people, including the parents, in ensuring this? And what are the commitments? So we are looking at a proper roadmap, which is not clear. So as of now, you're not here of any roadmap.
Are you worried? Are you not worried that that maybe with that we might have problems to roll out the free secondary education?
We might have problems, but I do trust that because the PS who's been put there is a very knowledgeable person. He has been in the system. He has been a PS for education before. And I think that he's just waiting for the minister to be appointed. Okay? I should believe he has some plans already, working with the management, but these have to be supported by the minister. So I think once the minister comes in, I believe that he's going to ensure that a proper roadmap is developed, and he's going to call for a consultative meeting with the other stakeholders, including us in the civil society, to make input into that. But without that, we'll be worried. So maybe
you are a civil society leader.
Yes.
Have you met them since they announced that we are going to have free secondary education, either officially or unofficially? Have you met them? Have you interacted with them? Have you talked to them?
Yeah, unofficially we have talked, and actually we have also issued a letter and documentation just to help them in the planning. We'll be waiting for feedback on that official documentation.
Are you satisfied with what is coming out in those interactions, that probably we could be heading the right direction?
The willingness is there to engage civil society, which is a positive thing. And we do hope that, especially when the minister is appointed, I think much of the interaction will be there, because at least as of now, the hands for the PS are a bit tied, because there are certain things that he cannot make without the minister. But once the minister is there, we should be able to have good dialogue with them, and we are going to book an appointment with the minister also to even speak to the letter that we have issued to the PS and the Minister Office.
Ndi ndondomeko zanji Dr. Nsapato zimene mukuona kuti boma likuyenera kuunikira to ensure that there is enough support in terms of resources as they are planning to introduce free secondary education?
Yeah, pali ndondomeko zambiri zimene tingathe kuziganizira. Of course, apa tikukamba zoti chachikulu ngati tikuchosa mafiziwa ndekuti boma likuyenera kutenga umwini and udindo. So we expect that in the budgeting, in the national budgeting, at least substantial funding should go to secondary education. That one we are going to monitor when the budget is presented in Parliament and passed. Secondly, we expect that the government should develop funding modalities that will make it easy to manage the free secondary education. So we can already learn something from the primary, because right now there is what is called school improvement grant. Okay, the primary schools are receiving school improvement grant. We think that in secondary there should be a proper capitation grant that will ensure that each of the schools, secondary schools, develops a plan and budget based on enrollment and based on the needs, and they should be supported periodically based on that. Secondly, thirdly, we think that the government needs to develop innovative funding strategies, including maybe we've been talking of introducing an education levy. An education levy can help. This is the time that the education levy needs to play its role. There has been positive response, but no action to implement this. So we hope that the government will try to use this. But also we hope that overall the Minister of Finance will ensure that the macroeconomic environment is positive and conducive to ensure that it supports the implementation of free secondary education. Kwinaku tikuganizanso kuti makolo akuyenera kuti akhale ndi udindo, nde asanene kuti zina zonse tiyisira kuboma chifukwa ngakhale ana samalipira mafees ena pazifunika kuti ana aja azipitabe ku school. So transport oti mwana achoke ku nyumba apite ku school ikuyenera kuti makolo akonse
asangopita manja kuti
asangopita kandi zovala kandi zikwama kamwina makope tina roti mwana uja tizikamuthandizira, makolo akuyenera kuti achite manage. Ngati akuyenera kuti azalipira part of the boarding, makolo akuyenera kuti azachite meet this responsibility. Nde pakuyenerabe kuti makolo atengenso udindo wawo, komanso kuti mwana azikalimbikira kumaphunziro, asamaka jombe nthawi ya mayeso azichita bwino kuti mwana akhonze apite pasokolo. So izizi zikuyenera kuti zikhale part of the roadmap timakamba ichi. Ndicho linga choti pakhale proper management. Ife ngati civil society, mabungwe omwe aboma, nde kuti titha kuperekapo uphungu wathu, komanso at the same time tizichita monitor to ensure kuti that political will is sustained over time. Because zitha kutheka kuti political will ana kuti tipanga izi koma implementation pesa kuti sizikutheka.
Dr. Nsapato, is there anything like free education? Isn't this just about subsidies where citizens will have to service through maybe taxes and all that?
Well, if we can say, to answer that, I would say there isn't something like free education because someone has to shoulder the responsibility. So if government says that parents are exempted from paying tuition, then someone will have to meet that. And then we know how government generates its income or revenue, either through the taxes. So we expect that there might be some taxes, but also through cooperation with the development partners like the donors and maybe civil society organizations in supporting the implementation. But at the same point, government also needs to ensure that it puts in transparent initiatives, avoid over expenditures in other areas, okay? Because what it means, priorities will need to shift from some sectors to begin to support and prioritize free secondary education. So there is nothing for free. But when government comes up to say we want parents to be relieved, the guardians to be relieved, then it will take responsibility to generate resources to provide funding. Another area of free is we are talking of scraping off the examination fees, for example. And then the Malawi National Examination Board, which was relying on the fees that were being paid to manage examinations, to administer administration, will certainly have a gap that someone will need to fill. So, for example, MANEB needs 9 billion to manage the examination. That's what they are getting from the registration. So that 9 billion has to come from somewhere. So government will have to take responsibility. That's why I was saying that at the end of the day, we need the political will, which should be sustained. It's not just promising. We need implementation. So, of course, we know that in the past, the DPP regime has made promises and it has implemented. We are only looking at building on that to ensure that this promise is also implemented and enhanced.
So it's not just about promising, but action has to be taken.
Action has to be taken on board, and the action has also to be related even to promoting quality of education. Because when we saw what we saw from free primary education, the access was there. People could go to school. Many children could go to school, but the quality was compromised because resources to ensure quality were not there. Textbooks, qualified teachers, nthawi imeneyi kunalembedwa aphunzitsi amati a poverty kuti athandize koma sizinali zothandiza. We have struggled with that. My quality indicators, they haven't been very good. They're improving slightly, but they needed to be improved drastically. And this could be a same fear with our secondary education. That's why we need to manage properly to ensure quality.
I was going there,
yes.
Dr. Nsapato.
Yeah.
Tikamakamba za 1994 pamene boma linayamba kukhazikitsa maphunziro aulere aku primary. Mavuto ndithu tinayamba kuwaona amene mukufotokoza enawo. Do you think the free secondary education initiative will present different challenges?
Well, there could be some similar challenges, but obviously we have learned our lessons over time. And that's why even maybe part of the lesson would be if we have to manage our free secondary education, we need to think correctly. Maybe we have to do it in phases. We can't go wholesale like last time where I said, no, we have opened the gates, go and you register, provided you have your PSLC, you have passed, you go and enroll at any secondary school. No, we have to manage that. It still has to be merit-based for the time being, so that we gain more resources, we recruit more teachers, we expand infrastructure, we have more classrooms, laboratories, and then maybe in the future we can open up to everyone, so that everyone who passes PSLCE, they can automatically go to secondary. But for now, we still need to manage the transition. So that is one of the lessons. And secondly, the financing mechanism. I mentioned about the school improvement grants. The school improvement grants were introduced after seeing that schools were struggling. So that is an innovation that has come out as one of the lessons. We have seen curriculum review, teacher recruitment, teacher training, both continuous professional development as well as in-service training. These are things that need to be done right now and properly managed. So we have our lessons from free primary education which we can use. And that's why we were saying that we are interested in seeing a roadmap that significantly addresses these areas, but also the process of developing that roadmap has to be consultative. It should involve all the key stakeholders, not just at Capitol Hill, but all the key stakeholders, including the various proprietors, because the proprietors include the private sector as well, even the churches, because like a number of grant-aided schools, they're owned by the churches. So even, and the churches, most of them, like the Catholic Church, they're concerned about the quality of education. And I'm sure one of their fears would be with free secondary education, maybe the quality of education in our schools is going to be reduced if not properly managed. So they need to be consulted as well. They should make their input so that we should be able to achieve something much better, learning lessons from free primary education.
Chifukwa ena Dr. Nsapato kuti mwina maphunziro aulere aku secondary afika mwansanga sitinathane ndi mavuto amene free primary education ikukumana nawo, and here we are tinena kuti free secondary education mwina sabwera mwachangu sitikwanitsa.
Ndikukhulupirira kuti ena atakhala ndi mafears amenewo, koma tikukamba kuti as for the DPP, it appears they started contemplating much earlier. So that's why in 2018 they issued that. They wanted, I believe that if they were to remain in office from 2018, 2019, 20 up to now, they should have realized that, and you could see that they started in phases. So they removed some of the fees, they left the other fees, so that it is done in phases. So 2019 to 2020, they removed certain fees. In that period, they are going to learn how that works, and then they would go to another step. And this is something that we think we need to apply right now. And the consultations can help a lot, because then we will be making realistic plans and realistic projections in terms of how many we reach. But going back to the figures that I gave you, 5 million in primary, 500,000 in secondary. We are talking of 4.5 million who were in primary are not able to access secondary.
Yes.
And by making sure that we have free secondary education, it is going to open up opportunities for a lot of children who would otherwise be dropping out of school. So I think this is very important. But also, if we are to achieve Malawi Vision 2063 and the Sustainable Development Goals, this is the right thing to do. Actually, we are late because we are only remaining with 5 years before 2030, when we'll be evaluated, and also 5 years before MIP1 of the Malawi 2063. And we need to ensure that we move with the targets. So we are actually late on the free secondary education, but good planning, budgeting, and the communication with parents, support from the communities, traditional leaders, faith communities will help to ensure that we achieve this objective.
The countries that provide free secondary education face numerous challenges, among them inadequacy of teaching and learning materials, talk of toilets, talk of classrooms. Is it a necessary evil that we introduce free secondary education and then face these challenges, or just let people pay for the services?
Yeah, that's a good question. And maybe let me go spiritual. In the Bible, they say the poor are always with us. Right? Meaning that if you want to develop, you should not always consider you should still aim high. You should aim high and think positively. I believe that as a country, yes, we do have several challenges that are there, but it should not stop us going to the moon. It should not stop us thinking positively and providing what is critical. Most of the challenges that we are talking today, if you read a book by Phillips of 1990, who analyzed human capital development in Malawi, most of these challenges were there. If you read books in 1926, when the Department of Education was being established, the challenges of shortage of textbooks, shortages of teachers, shortages of other resources to manage our education, they were there. So these are recurring challenges. Now, what is required is we should manage these challenges. In life, everything will not go smoothly. And that should not stop us from aiming high, being creative and innovative and thinking positively. So I believe that, yes, we do have challenges that we are experiencing in our system, but let's be progressive and begin to provide, to open up opportunities for those who don't have opportunity. This country cannot achieve development, meaningful development, if we don't have a cadre of qualified but also educated people who have reached at least secondary education. Yes, primary is okay, but it's not enough to have complicated skills that are required for development. The way life is complicated at this point with the ICT, with new technologies, need to open up new markets and so on. So we need the human resource that is really up to address these challenges, and opening up space for secondary education as well as tertiary education would be the way to go, despite the challenges that are there.
Maiko ena monga ngati Ghana, malamulo awo amati maphunziro azikhala aulere komanso okakamiza. Free and compulsory.
Yes.
Ife kuno tingoti aulere basi. Kokakamizako basi zi?
Yeah, tikawerenga mu manifesto ya DPP akukamba za ku primary kuti azakhala free komanso okakamiza. Basically because over the past 30 years we've tried to manage the free, okay? Koma now we need to go to the okakamiza. Ndicho lenga choti mwina the 10% who are still out of school can access primary education. Ku secondary panopo tayamba bwino kuti akhale free. Making secondary education compulsory at the immediate stage might be difficult because it means that our system needs to be ready. You remember that I mentioned about the numbers, but also we have around maybe less than 1,000 public secondary schools, okay, that are taking students in the public schools. Okay, if we are to open up and say, okay, the transition rate from primary to secondary is around 49%. So, okakamiza would mean kuti wakonza maeso ako acha a stand 8. They would immediately uwena kupita ku secondary. Now, akakukakamiza kuja sukapeza space, sukapeza aphunzisi, sukapeza zipangizo, okay? Therefore, it may not be realistic kuti tikamayamba chaka cha mawachi tinene kuti maphunziro aulere aku secondary akhalenso okakamiza. Koma what we need to do is panopo amene wachita qualify, amene amusankha kuti apite ku secondary akachite enjoy free education, okay? And then boma liyambe kumanga sopano ma school ena, okay? Lichite recruit aphunzisi ena, ligule zipangizo zambiri. Ndiye kuti what will happen is tizachoka pa 49%, mwina kuzafika pa 80%, pa 90%, and then we can say kuti panopo ndiye tikunena kuti zikhale zokakamiza. Kuti wakonza maeso ako a stand 8 ukuyenera kupita ku secondary. In that way it will be realistic. And that's why I was saying kuti we need to plan properly. We can do it in a phase approach. Yes, pali maiko ena ngati ku Ghana, kandi ku Kenya, kandi ku Zambia, and kuti free education. Koma kuti akhale okakamiza ku Malawi kunoko, it may not be realistic at this point. Koma it's a way that maybe nangasidu kamba za Malawi 2063, mwina by 2063, titakuzanina kuti maphunziro azakhale okakamiza ku primary komanso ku secondary. Komanso kukakamiza kumayenera kuti kukhala ma guidelines ochita enforce kukakamiza kucha. And this has been a challenge ngati ku free primary education. Boma pakati apo limanena kuti likonza ma guideline ndondomeko zoti anthu asatire kuti maphunziro aku primary akhale compulsory, koma ma guidelines amene aja sanakonzedwe and they are not enforced. So would need ma guidelines, komanso would need proper registration kuti Education Act tizaisinthe kuti maphunziro aku secondary ndi okakamiza. So chifukwa cha zimene ndikuona ngati kuti sitingayambe maphunziro okakamiza aku secondary pa nthawi ino koma titha kuzakonza kusogolo kuno.
Munakambapo za sustainable development goals.
Yes.
Makamaka goal number 4 imene imati aims to ensure inclusive, equitable, quality education and promote lifelong
learning opportunity
for all.
Yes.
Nimafuna tipange dwell pa for all. Do you think
yes.
What is happening now in the country is in the right direction to achieving that free, quality education and for all?
Yeah, I think that it's in the right direction because tikunena kuti tikufuna tichose zipinjo zimene ophunzira makumana nazo kuti asachite progress in the education yawo kuti athe kuphunzira bwino. So ku primary aliyense achite access. Ku secondary amene wasankhidwa kuti apite ku secondary apite kumene kuja akamalize maphunziro ake, asasire panjira chifukwa kuti akuyenera kuti alipire. Ndipo chosa malipiro osiyanasiyana kuti anthu amene aphunzire we are moving in the right direction. Koma, of course, ngati dziko titaona kuti our resources are not sufficient to ensure that everyone who qualifies goes to secondary education or goes to tertiary education. But the opportunities, the enabling environment needs to be enhanced as we move towards 2030 and beyond, so that we increase the access. So the moment we are increasing the access to these opportunities, we are moving towards the sustainable development goals. But in terms of maybe realistically reaching that by 2030, it might be difficult for us. That's why we have Malawi Vision 2063. I think after MIP 1, which ends in 2030, we'll have MIP 2, which may give another 10 years. And then we'll be ensuring that we create more opportunities for lifelong learning. So from early childhood development up to adult literacy and education.
How do you see the sustainability of secondary education with the introduction of free education?
Yeah, over a short period of time, it might not be very sustainable, but over time, it should be sustainable. Why am I saying that? If you open up more opportunities for people to access secondary and then tertiary, it means after some time, maybe 10 years when they complete, those will get good jobs and those will be able to support others within their neighborhood. Those will build the economy. And in the end, we should be able to bring in more people to have access to education and sustain the initiative. But again, it also means that we need to have our priorities right. We should have good plans which should be implemented. In Malawi, we like to develop plans, but implementation has been a challenge. And I think this is something that needs to be done. Even the manifesto of the DPP or the plans of the government will not be executed or sustained if there is no good implementation. So I think they need to have a good implementation team that will track progress, address challenges, and ensure that we move towards sustainability.
Pakhale ndondomeko zanji zolondoloza ndithu ntchito imene ya maphunziro aulere aku sekondari, chifukwa ena kuona ngati kungozisiya kuti zikhale kuti basi tayambitsa, kungozisiya choncho osamalondoloza bwinobwino ndi kuti khandi mavuto omwe aja tinali nawo ku free primary education.
Exactly. Mwina chinthu chimodzi chimene tingathe kuchita borrow from the previous regime anali ndi what was called presidential delivery unit. Ndikuona ngati mwina this government needs to maintain that and put in maybe people who can support implementation of that in the unit. So like a policy implementation unit, a policy delivery unit that will help in the planning of what has been promised or pledged or the strategies that are there, and be able to track progress on a yearly basis, so that maybe before a new financial year budget is implemented, at least that presidential delivery unit or implementation team should be able to support and provide their inputs. In that way, if that is done on a yearly basis, at least it will provide opportunity to ensure that the implementation is properly done. Secondly, there is also need to ensure civil society, the voice of civil society is strengthened. Mm-hmm. We saw that in the past, some of the CSO groups that were very vocal in the past, they lost their voice and they are not able to track and monitor what was happening to provide checks and balances necessary. So we need vigilant civil society. We also need capacitated human resource at all levels, because implementation will require adequate personnel, but also people who have technical expertise to support the government in rolling out the plans that are there. So there is need to do a needs assessment in terms of skills of the people that are there and fill the gaps, train the people, and ensure that we build the capacity to be able to implement. I think the last one is the financing. So we need the economy to start working very well. Because the broader economy, the macroeconomy, if it's not working, it means that even the micro level, it will be very hard. And the service areas like education, health will continue to suffer. So we need to grow our economy. Let's move towards annual growth rate of 6% of the GDP. If we can go even beyond that, it would be great, because it means we'll bring in resources. And that's why I think sectors like mining, that government is trying to emphasize, sectors like agriculture, sectors like industries and so on, the trade, which can help us to gain more revenue. These need to be encouraged, at the same time fighting corruption, so that we should be able to sustain the initiatives that are there and implement the plans that we have developed.
From where you are sitting, Dr. Nsapato, what is the teacher-learner ratio in public sector schools?
Yeah, the teacher-learner ratio is 1 to 65, which is very high. It is against the international policy provision of 1 to 40. It's supposed to be 1 to 40, but now it's 1 to 65, which is very high. And of course, that's the national average. Normally, the national averages, they mask some realities. You'd have a school where the teacher-learner ratio is over 1 to 100, maybe even 1 to 200, and so on. So that requires the recruitment of more teachers. But also it requires that we need to train more teachers. So the capacity of our teacher training institutions has to be enhanced. We need at least 50,000 more teachers in order to cover the deficit at the primary as well as secondary level, which needs to be addressed.
Nanga tindi madeski okwanira kuti ophunzirawa zikakhalapo zipinda zophunzirira.
Yeah, my classroom, the pupil classroom ratio is around 1 to 106, which is also very high. It's supposed to be 1 to 40, just like the pupil teacher ratio. So we have seen over the years, government has provided funding in the development budget for construction of more classrooms, more schools. That can reduce the pupil classroom ratio and ensure that the students, when they go, they learn in a proper environment. But we are still far, but I think more effort needs to be done. And for free secondary education, I already said that we need to do it in a phased approach. Let's still follow the merit principle of selecting students to secondary. In that way, we'll be managing expectations, so that once we construct new classrooms, we can now increase the ratio of those going to the secondary. But if we don't do that, it means that we'll create more challenges in the system, and this will backfire, and it will put the quality of education down.
Dr. Nsapato, ndikuthokozeni kwambiri kuti munapeza mpata kuti ticheze.
Zikomo kwambiri.
Ndi menemo mene tachirizira kucheza ndi Dr. Limbani Nsapato. Iwowa ndi katswiri pa nkhani za maphunziro mdziko lino. Kufikiranso tsiku lina pamene tidzabwere ndi ina program ya Zodiak exclusive. Ndingoti mwakomanonse zikomo.